So we're going to spend another day with Pythagorean theorem in word problems because it's pretty much one of the ways that they ask you on the STAR test. So remember with the word problems, we visualize this diagram right here. Anytime it's referring to north, south, a pole, the height of something, then it's referring to the vertical side of the right triangle. If you see east, west, shadow, base, or width, then it's referring to the other leg of the hypotenuse or the right triangle that makes it horizontal. And if it's referring to the hypotenuse itself, a ladder, a rope that goes from a pole to the ground, the diagonal, or a ramp, then it's referring to the hypotenuse. So just more practice problems. Maria walked 3 kilometers west. So west is the horizontal, so that's 3, and 4 kilometers south, so that's the vertical side. How far is she from her starting point? So they want to know how far the hypotenuse is. So if these two are the legs, remember it's a squared plus b squared, my two legs, equals c squared, which I don't know. So 3 squared is 9, plus 4 squared, which is 16, and we don't know c squared. So 9 plus 16 is exactly 25, but to get my final answer, we take the square root. And the square root of 25 is 5. That's how long the point is from where she started. So remember, if the hypotenuse is missing, we add. The laptop screens are determined by the length of the diagonal portion of the screen, rounded to the nearest whole number. A laptop has a 10-inch width and the height measures 8 inches. Calculate the screen size. So the reason why I didn't put a picture on this one is because a screen is a rectangle, not a triangle. But if it's asking how long the screen size is, then it's actually, when you measure the screen size, they measure it by the diagonal of the screen. They told me that the laptop is 10 inches wide, so that's where 10 goes, and 8 inches in height. So to find the screen size, they're looking for the diagonal. That means the hypotenuse in this case. So if 8 and 10 are the legs, we have 8 squared plus 10 squared equals c squared, which we don't know. 8 squared is 64 plus 10 squared, which is 100, equals c squared. 64 plus 100 is 164. And we added because we're looking for the hypotenuse. So now I take the square root of 164. And so the length or the measurement of the screen is 12.8 whenever we round to the tens place. If they wanted us to round to the wholes place, then it would be 13. David leaves the house to go to school. He walks 200 meters west, so what 200 meters west is the horizontal, and 125 meters north, which is the vertical. How far is he from the starting point? Round to the nearest hole. So we're again looking for the hypotenuse. So if these two are the legs, we have 125 squared plus 200 squared equals c squared. So 125 squared is a big number, 15625, plus 200 squared, which is 40,000, equals c squared. Remember, if we're missing the hypotenuse, we add those two numbers. Okay, and whatever we get is not my final answer because we have to take the square root of that number. So the square root is a big number as well. The hypotenuse is 235.8. They wanted us to round to the whole though, so I guess I could read. If we round to the whole, that's 236. There is a rope running from the top of a flagpole to a hook in the ground. So here's the flagpole, here's the hook on the ground, so here's the rope. The flagpole is 6 meters high, so there's 6, and the hook is 8 meters from the base. So the base is referring to that. So they're looking for the hypotenuse. So that means if 6 and 8 are the legs, we have 6 squared plus 8 squared equals c squared. So 6 squared is 36, 8 squared is 64, and c squared we don't know. Remember, if the hypotenuse is missing, we add 36 and 64. So we get 100, but to do the square root, to get the final answer, the square root of 100 is exactly 10. There's my answer. What is the perimeter of a right triangle if the hypotenuse is 15, so the hypotenuse is 15, and one of the legs is 9. So it doesn't matter which one I put 9 on because I just know it's one of the legs. So this time the other leg is missing. So if the other leg is missing, I know it's 9 squared plus the other leg squared plus 15 squared. 15 is the hypotenuse. 9 squared is 81 plus b squared we don't know. 15 squared is 225. Okay, now remember, if one of the legs is missing, we don't add these two numbers, we subtract. So 225 minus 81 is 144. But 144 is not my final answer. We have to take the square root of that to find the length. So the square root of 144 is 12. So the missing side is 12. But they don't want to know the missing side, they want to know the perimeter of the right triangle. So after I found that missing side, we add 9 plus 15 plus 12. So my final answer is 36, which is the perimeter. A 20-foot ladder leaning against the wall, so a 20-foot ladder, my ladder is the hypotenuse, is used to reach a window that is 17 feet above the ground. Since the window's here, and this is the ground, it's 17 feet above, how far from the wall is the bottom of the ladder? So if the bottom of the ladder is here, they want to know how far it is from the wall. That's the other leg. So that means if we're missing a leg, I know one leg is 17 squared plus my missing leg equals 20 squared. So 17 squared is 289 plus b squared equals 20 squared, 400. Remember, if a leg is missing, we subtract these two numbers, we don't add. So 400 minus 289 is 111. But to get my final answer, I take the square root of that number. So the missing side is 10.5 if we round to the tens place. Just a couple of more practice problems. The diagonal of a rectangle is 25 inches and the width is 15 inches. So we're talking about a rectangle here, but when it's referring to the diagonal of a rectangle, that's from corner to corner. So that length is 25 and the width is 15 inches. The width is the bottom of the right triangle. They want to know the length. So we're missing the other leg. So if we're missing the other leg, that means I know one of them is 15 squared plus my missing leg equals 25 squared. So 15 squared is 225 plus b squared equals 25 squared, which is 625. Remember, if a leg is missing, we don't add these two numbers, we subtract. So 625 minus 225 is 400. But to get my final answer, we take the square root of 400, which is 20. So the missing side is 20. A yield sign a yield sign is in the shape of an equilateral triangle. So this is a strange one because it's not referring to a right triangle, it's referring to an equilateral. An equilateral means all three sides are the same. Its sides measures 24 each. So I know this side is 24, this side is 24, and this side is 24. What is the height of the sign? So if you notice, when I drew the height of the sign, it became two right triangles. Okay, so let's imagine I'm just looking at this side of the right triangle, or the equilateral triangle. I now can see the hypotenuse is 24. I don't know the height of the right triangle. And a lot of people think that this triangle, the right triangle, is 24 at the bottom. But remember, 24 is how long it is from the equilateral triangle. So how do I figure out how long this side is? Well, this is split in half. So half of 24 is 12. So now I'm just imagining this side of the triangle and I'm missing one of the legs. So if I know one of the legs is 12 squared, I don't know the other leg, and the hypotenuse is 24. 12 squared is 144 plus the other leg. 24 squared is 576. Remember, if a leg is missing, we don't add, we subtract. So 576 minus 144 is 432. To get my final answer, we take the square root. So the square root of 432 is 20.8 if we round to the tenths place.